There's something oddly disorienting about standing in a room full of people who are smiling at your wife and barely acknowledging you. I guess I've gotten used to it over the years. Allison's always been the magnetic one, warm, charming, sharp as hell. She knows how to fill a room, how to command it, how to make people feel like they matter. I used to admire that about her. I think I still do, in a way. But that night, something felt different. The Southern Art Museum's annual charity gala was the kind of event that made local magazines and business newsletters. Big donors, board members, community influencers. Allison had been prepping for weeks. Meetings, fittings, back-to-back phone calls. She was one of the gala's organizers this year, which meant she'd been working late. More tense than usual, flitting in and out of our home like a hummingbird on espresso. That Friday night, she emerged from the bedroom in a Berg * NDY gown that genuinely stole my breath. I told her so, too. She smiled at me, distracted, polite, not cold, not cruel, just elsewhere, like her mind was already in the ballroom. The event itself was grand. Marble floors, jazz quartet, champagne fountains. The kind of thing where people pretended to care about local art but were really there for the networking and the selfies. I walked in holding Allison's coat and clutch. I spent most of the evening standing near the bar or wandering past exhibits I'd already seen a dozen times, nodding politely at strangers who barely registered me. She, on the other hand, was everywhere, shaking hands, laughing, her voice rising just enough to draw others in. I watched her speak with a group of men in suits, older, polished. I couldn't hear the conversation, but the way they leaned in when she talked said enough. She was the star of the evening, and I was her silent escort. I didn't feel jealous. Not exactly, but I felt something. Disconnected, maybe, like a piece of furniture being moved from one room to the next, functional but forgettable. We drove home late, past midnight. She was buzzing from the night, chatting about turnout numbers, how the silent auction outperformed expectations, who made surprise donations. I nodded and asked follow-up questions like a good husband. But something about the way she spoke, the tight edge in her voice, the way her eyes stayed fixed on the road even when I said her name, put a weight in my gut I couldn't shake. The next morning was quiet. Our son was at a sleepover, and the house felt still in that rare, almost reverent way you get in the early hours of a weekend. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and mindlessly scrolled through my phone. Eventually, I found myself on the museum's official Instagram account. They'd already posted photos from the gala, and I clicked through them out of habit. Smiling donors, candid *TS of people clinking glasses, a wide-angle view of the atrium with everyone lit up in golden tones. Then I saw it. One photo stopped me cold. Allison, standing close, too close, to a man I didn't recognize. Tall, clean-cut, maybe mid-40s in a charcoal suit. His hand was on her waist, not hovering politely like some gentleman in a posed *T, but flat on her hip, fingers spread like he had every right to be there. Her hand was on his chest, right above his heart, her fingers resting lightly on his lapel. And the way they looked at each other, half smiles, eyes locked like they were sharing a private joke, hit me like *Kerr punch. I stared at that photo for a long time, tried to come up with reasonable explanations. Maybe he was a colleague, a friend from college, someone she hadn't seen in years. Maybe the photo was taken out of context, just an awkward angle, a fraction of a second misinterpreted. But no matter how many times I looked at it, the feeling in my chest didn't change. I clicked on the photo, read the caption. Event coordinator Allison Blake sharing a moment with museum board member Marcus Ryland. A name, Marcus. A board member. Still a stranger to me. I didn't go storming into the bedroom. I didn't throw the phone down in anger or demand answers. I waited, sipped my now cold coffee and stared out the window, trying to make sense of what I was feeling. Hurt? Suspicion? Embarrassment? When Allison came downstairs, I was sitting on the edge of the couch, phone in hand. She looked rested, in a good mood, still wearing the soft t-shirt she liked to sleep in. I showed her the photo without saying a word. Her eyes flicked to the screen, and for the briefest second, just a flicker, something passed across her face. Recognition? Panic? It was gone almost immediately. She gave a short breath, like an exasperated teacher dealing with a child's tantrum. "Oh, that," she said casually. "That's Marcus. He's on the museum board. We were just talking after the donor toast. Why is your hand on his chest?" "It was a photo op, Vincent." He said something funny and the photographer snapped it at the wrong moment. "And his hand?" She glanced at the photo again, then back at me. Her tone sharpened just slightly. "Are we really going to do this? Are you seriously analyzing a photograph like it's a crime scene?" "I'm asking a question," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She shook her head. "This is ridiculous. You weren't even talking to me half the night. I was running an event and now I have to explain a photo like I'm on trial." That was the moment. Right there. The shift. I watched her flip it, turn my discomfort into an accusation, my concern into a character flaw. I didn't respond. Just nodded, like maybe I was the one being irrational. She walked away muttering something about how she didn't have the energy for drama. I sat there, still staring at the photo. And in that moment, I knew. Maybe not the full truth. Maybe not the details. But I knew enough. Something was happening. And whatever it was, it didn't start with that photo. It was already in motion, quietly rewriting the story I thought we were living. If you'd asked me a year ago what trust looks like, I probably would have pointed to my wife. To our routines. Our history. The shared life we'd built over 17 years of marriage. I used to think trust was about loyalty or maybe predictability. But now I know better. Trust dies in the silence between sentences. It decays in glances and half-answers and long pauses where they're used to be warmth. After the gala photo incident, things didn't explode. There were no screaming matches, no ultimatums. Just a quiet fracture. A hairline crack that grew with every passing day, every strange look, every new excuse. I didn't tell anyone. Not my brother, not my coworkers, not even my best friend Jack, who's been in my life since college. I kept it locked away, pretending like everything was fine. But it wasn't. At first, it was little things. Allison started wearing perfume again, the same kind she used back in our early years, back when we were still trying to impress each other. It used to be her signature scent, something warm and floral. Then one day she told me she was over it, too sweet, too young, she said. She'd stopped wearing perfume altogether for the past few years. And yet, a week after the gala, there it was again. Subtle but unmistakable. I noticed it one morning when she walked past me in the kitchen. I said nothing. She'd also joined a local dance studio ballroom of all things. Said it was for stress relief. Allison was never one for organized hobbies. She liked yoga, solo runs, gardening. But now she was dressing up on Thursday nights, hair done, makeup just a little too polished for a low-key class at a strip mall studio. When I asked if she wanted me to come watch sometime, half joking, half hoping, she laughed and said, "That would be awkward, wouldn't it?" She started carrying her phone everywhere. Everywhere. She used to leave it on the nightstand when we went to bed and she'd groan about texts interrupting her sleep. Now it followed her like a limb, into the bathroom, to the laundry room, even just walking to the mailbox. I once asked who she was texting so much. She just said people, then pivoted the conversation to our grocery list. When you live with someone long enough, you begin to catalog their habits like an archivist. You know how long they take in the shower, what sounds their footsteps make, the way their voice changes when they're tired or irritated or lying. That last one I started hearing more often. Not big lies, just evasions. Deflections. She dodged my questions with humor or defensiveness or changed the subject entirely. The SK*LL in it made me wonder how long she'd been practicing. Then came the trips. She'd been visiting her friend Rachel in Bluffton every other weekend for years, nothing new there. But now when I asked what they'd done, she couldn't answer. "Oh, just hung out. Talked. You know how it is." Except I didn't. I'd met Rachel. She was the type to overshare about every detail of her day. Allison never returned with funny stories or inside jokes anymore. Just vague descriptions and exhaustion. And she never asked me about my weekends either. Once I gently pushed, "You've been seeing Rachel a lot lately." She shrugged. "It's just been a hard month. It helps to have space." I nodded even though I didn't understand. Space from what? Me? Our son? Our life? The real turning point, though, was the Saturday she left early, said she was going to Rachel's again, and didn't come back until after midnight. She didn't answer texts. When she walked in, her hair was damp and she looked startled to see me awake. "I thought you'd be in bed," she said quickly, setting her keys down like a magician trying to distract from the sleight of hand. "I waited up. Just wanted to make sure you got home safe." She offered a half smile. That's sweet. That was it. No apology. No explanation. The next morning, I asked if she'd enjoyed her day. She said yes and left it at that. No details. The week after that, she left our son with her mom for an entire Saturday, no warning, no clear reason. I just needed some time, she told me when I asked. She didn't say where she went. Didn't volunteer anything. And when I pressed, her expression changed. Cold. Dismissive. Like I'd violated some invisible contract by expecting transparency. I tried to tell myself I was overthinking things. That it was a phase. A reaction to stress. But the patterns were too precise. Too calculated. It wasn't just her being distant. It was her creating distance, brick by brick, excuse by excuse. Even our conversations changed. They got shorter. Shallower. We stopped laughing during dinner. We stopped sitting on the couch after our son went to bed. I'd come home from work and find her already halfway through a glass of wine, curled up on the corner of the couch, pretending to be absorbed in a show she never used to watch. She stopped asking how my day was. She stopped noticing when I stayed late at the office. She was there, but she wasn't. I began keeping my own mental ledger. I started noticing the timestamps of her texts. When she left the room to take a call. The way she smiled at her screen when she thought I wasn't looking. I'm not proud of it, but I once checked her location through our shared calendar app. She'd marked herself at Rachel's again, but the pin showed her phone near the Riverside downtown. Nowhere close to Bluffton. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds of her breathing beside me. Wondering if I was imagining it all. Wondering if I was crazy. But deep down, I already knew the answer. One morning, I watched her brush her hair in the mirror, humming to herself. She caught my reflection behind her and smiled. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." She nodded and went back to brushing, as if we were just two strangers sharing a bathroom out of convenience. The woman I married was still there, in pieces. In fragments of gestures and old routines. But something else had moved in, wearing her face. A shadow version of her. A version that had secrets. I didn't know exactly what was going on. But I knew enough. She wasn't just pulling away. She was already gone. I wasn't planning on coming home early. My firm had sent me to a conference in Charleston, just an overnight networking event, mostly meaningless chatter and lukewarm coffee. I was supposed to stay the night and drive back Sunday morning. But around 2 p.m., sitting in a breakout session about sustainable materials, something in me snapped. I was staring at a slide on reclaimed wood when a thought slipped in, one I couldn't shake. I need to go home. Now. I didn't tell Allison. I didn't text. I just got in my car and drove the 2 hours back to Savannah with the windows down and the radio off. The whole way, I played out possibilities in my head, some rational, others far-fetched. Maybe I'd walk in and find her baking cookies with our son. Maybe she'd be out running errands. Or maybe. It was quiet when I got there. Not suspiciously quiet, just still. The kind of stillness that hums when no one expects to be interrupted. Our son was at my mom's for the weekend, so the house should have felt peaceful. But it didn't. It felt paused. I stepped inside and immediately noticed the scent. Faint but sharp like cologne. Not mine. Something muskier, heavier, like the kind sold in square bottles behind locked glass. It hung in the hallway, clung to the walls like steam after a shower. The bedroom door was open. The bed looked too neat, like someone had made it in a hurry, not with care, but to erase evidence. The sheets were smoothed over but slightly off-center, one pillow more indented than the other. I moved through the house like I was underwater, every sound muffled, my breath caught behind my teeth. The bathroom light was on. The air still thick with warmth, like someone had just gotten out of the shower. A used towel sat crumpled on the floor, damp, fresh. 2 glasses sat on the counter. One with a smudge of red lipstick on the rim, the other with a faint citrus scent I didn't recognize. Lemon or maybe bergamot. A man's scent. I looked down. A shirt was draped over the edge of the laundry basket. It wasn't mine. Too slim, too tailored. A pale blue button-up with a loose red thread hanging from the left cuff. I didn't need a confession. I didn't need to search her phone. I didn't need to see him. This was enough. I walked out of the bathroom slowly, like I might wake something I didn't want to see. I stood in the hallway for a while, listening. Nothing. No footsteps, no voices. Just the soft buzz of the fridge from the kitchen and my own heartbeat in my ears. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. I thought about our wedding day, how nervous she was that morning, how she made me promise not to cry during the vows because she'd cry too and her mascara would run. I thought about the house we bought, the night we signed the mortgage papers and drank wine out of coffee mugs because we couldn't find the box with the glasses. I thought about our son's first day of school. About late-night grocery runs and the sound she made when she laughed without restraint. And then I thought about that shirt, about the lipstick on that glass, and I realized none of it mattered anymore. Not in the way it once did. I couldn't hold on to a version of us that only existed in my memory. I didn't confront her. There was no confrontation left in me. I knew that if I spoke to her now, it would either unravel into chaos or worse, she'd lie. She'd cry. She'd twist it until I started questioning what I'd seen with my own eyes. I didn't want her voice in my head anymore. So I packed a bag. Just enough clothes for a week. A few pairs of socks, jeans, button-downs. I took our son's things, too, his overnight bag, his toothbrush, his favorite hoodie with the dinosaur on it. I moved on autopilot like someone else was guiding my hands. I left 3 things on our bed, the gala photo, printed and slid into a clear folder. My wedding ring placed squarely on the pillow. And a letter. The letter wasn't long. Just the truth. Allison? I know. I came home early today and saw everything. I don't need an explanation. I don't want one. I've taken our son. We'll be safe and cared for. Please don't call. Vincent. I stared at those 3 items for a long time. Then I turned out the lights, walked out the front door, and locked it behind me. I drove straight to my sister Claire's house in Augusta. She was out of town for the weekend and she'd offered the place to me months ago for a work trip that never happened. I let myself in, dropped my bags by the couch, and sat in the silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept going over it all, every sign I missed, every red flag I ignored. The late nights, the perfume, the defensiveness, the blank weekends. The museum photo. The way she had smiled at him like I wasn't even real. At some point, around 3 a.m., I pulled out my laptop. I logged out of every shared account, banking, streaming, cloud storage. I changed the passwords to everything. I set up a new phone plan. I began searching for schools near Claire's house, checking on transfer policies. I researched lawyers. I saved everything, every receipt, every calendar entry, every piece of data she thought I'd never notice. This wasn't rage. This was something colder. Something focused. By morning, I'd already made arrangements for our son to stay enrolled remotely for a few weeks. I emailed my firm and requested an emergency leave. They didn't ask questions, just said to take the time I needed. I appreciated that more than I could say. Allison still hadn't called. Not that it mattered. My phone was off. My world was off. I wasn't ready to explain this to our son. Not yet. He was still too young to understand betrayal. But he understood sadness. He understood distance. I told him we were going to stay at Aunt Claire's for a while and that Mommy was busy. He didn't ask too many questions, but he clung to me more than usual. I let him. I needed it too. Over the next 2 days, I built a routine. Wake up, make breakfast, homeschool modules, a walk around the neighborhood. I didn't tell anyone where I was. Not friends, not family, not even my mother. I needed silence to think. Distance to breathe. I didn't check social media. I didn't read emails. I didn't look for answers. Because I already had them. She made a choice. 1,000 little choices, probably. And now I was making mine. We weren't going back. There's something eerie about starting over in silence. No announcements. No phone calls. No drama. Just the quiet dismantling of a shared life, piece by piece, behind a locked apartment door. I didn't tell Allison where I'd gone, and I didn't give her the chance to ask. I had already heard enough lies to last me the rest of my life. The apartment in Augusta was nothing special, modest, 2 bedrooms, linoleum floors that creaked when I walked too fast. But it had clean walls and a deadbolt, and for now, that was enough. Claire let me stay as long as I needed, no questions asked. I was grateful, though I kept my distance even from her. The only person I truly saw every day was my son, and even with him, I spoke softly. As if raising my voice might bring the past crashing back through the window. I changed every password we'd ever shared. Netflix. Our utility accounts. The bank. I locked down our savings and rerouted our joint checking into a frozen holding pattern until the paperwork caught up. I knew she'd eventually notice, but I didn't care. She had crossed a line and I was drawing one of my own right between us. Next came the files. I wasn't a detective, but I knew how to document. I built a digital archive with folders titled Gala Incident, Behavioral Shifts, Financial Activity, and Custody Evidence. I screenshot asterisk T texts, took time-stamped photos, wrote down every strange detail I could remember from the weeks leading up to my departure. My profession had taught me precision, and now I was turning that discipline onto the collapse of my marriage. One night, I was combing through an old email chain when I found something that made me freeze. An e-receipt for a credit card I didn't know she had. It was billed to Allison Pryor. Pryor, her maiden name. I hadn't seen that name used since our wedding 17 years ago. The transaction history wasn't long, but it was telling. A boutique hotel in Charleston. A dinner for two at a wine bar. A gift shop purchase with a vague descriptor, jewelry artisan. I stared at the screen, feeling a dull ache behind my eyes. She hadn't just been unfaithful. She'd built an entire pocket life around it. New identity, new account, new version of herself. I wasn't even angry, not anymore, just numb. I sent everything to the lawyer I'd quietly retained. His name was Wexler, stern voice, sharp eyes, no nonsense. The kind of man who called me Mr. Blake, even after I asked him not to. I liked him. He didn't blink when I said I wasn't ready to file yet. He just told me to keep gathering and keep quiet. Allison's playing her game, he said. Let her. But we're playing chess. I took his advice to heart. The calls from her started on the third day. Voicemails, each more frantic than the last. Vincent, please. Just tell me where you are. We can talk. You can't just take our son and disappear. That's not fair. You're being cruel now. This isn't you. But that's the thing. It was me now. The version of me that had been pushed into a corner and forced to choose between dignity and delusion. I picked dignity. I didn't respond to her messages. Not the calls. Not the texts. Not the email she sent with the subject line, "Please read." I saw them all. I saved them all. I replied to none. On the 6th day, she reached out to Claire. Claire told her nothing. By the second week, the tone of her messages shifted. Less apologetic, more accusatory. You've kidnapped our child. You're mentally unstable. People are starting to notice. I'll take legal action if I have to. That last one made me laugh. It was almost impressive, the speed with which she went from begging to threatening. Classic misdirection. A way to rewrite the narrative before anyone could get too close to the truth. But what she didn't know was that I was already ahead of her. I had already filed for a temporary custody order, citing emotional volatility and evidence of infidelity. I wasn't keeping our son from her out of vengeance. I was protecting him from instability. I didn't trust her to keep him safe in a house built on secrets. The court granted it without argument. She would find out soon enough when the envelope arrived. Still, I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents. Not my co-workers. Not even Jack, who had stood beside me at my wedding and once told me Allison was the best thing that ever happened to me. I let the silence stretch. I let it protect me. There was something freeing about it, in a strange way. No one asking questions I couldn't answer. No one looking at me with pity or judgment. No one trying to play therapist. It was just me, my son, and a city that didn't know our names. We spent slow days exploring parks and old bookstores. At night, we built Lego castles and read stories before bed. I found comfort in the routines, in his trust, in the way he never once asked where his mother was. The only time he brought her up was over breakfast, during our second weekend in Augusta. He looked up from his cereal and asked, "Daddy, are we ever going back to our house?" I paused, stirred my coffee, then said, "Not for a while." He nodded like he understood more than he let on. Maybe he did. I got him into a temporary school program, just until things were settled. I adjusted my work schedule, taking freelance design gigs instead of full-time jobs. The income was smaller but manageable. And more importantly, it gave me space to think, to plan, to rebuild. In quiet moments, I caught myself wondering what Allison was telling people. Our friends, her family, the museum board. I imagined the stories she spun. Me as the villain, the unstable husband, the controlling father who snapped. She was always good at narratives. I'd watched her manipulate facts before to make herself look like the hero. It was subtle. Talent, really. The ability to bend reality without ever technically lying. But I didn't chase down her version of events. I didn't call anyone to correct the record.
Wexler had warned me, let her say what she wants. The truth will catch up. He was right. Because silence doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes silence is strategy. I didn't want revenge. I wasn't out to destroy her. I just wanted clarity. Peace. A clean line between the before and the after. And slowly, I was carving it. One password. One document. One quiet morning at a time. If there's one thing Allison knows how to do better than most, it's control a narrative. I suppose I used to admire that in her, the way she could enter a room and subtly shift the atmosphere in her favor. She didn't need to raise her voice or force an argument. She'd just redirect, soften, change the angle of the lens. It was effortless, the way she shaped how people saw her. Now, that same talent was being used to rewrite our collapse. I first caught wind of it through a mutual acquaintance, one of the museum volunteers, a sweet older woman named Marlene. She texted me a few weeks after I disappeared from Savannah. It was an innocent message. Something like, "Hey, just checking in. Hope all is well. Allison said you've been struggling lately. Praying for peace in your heart." Peace in my heart? I stared at the screen for a long time, stunned at how quickly she'd set the stage. It was like watching a play you didn't audition for, suddenly realizing your role had already been cast as the antagonist. In Allison's version of events, I had pulled away emotionally and fallen into paranoia, isolating myself from friends and becoming erratic. She told people I'd left suddenly because I was experiencing a psychological break, a personal reckoning. She called it spiritual, emotional, whatever excuse fit the audience. She wasn't angry in her version. Just worried. Heartbroken. "I don't know where he is," she told people. "He's blocked me. I think he's lost." I didn't even feel rage. Just awe. The SK*LL of it. The smoothness. I knew she'd reach out to my business contacts next, and sure enough, the following Monday I got a call from an old client. He asked if I was okay, said he'd heard I was taking time off for my mental health. I assured him I was fine and still taking work. He sounded surprised. And cautious. Allison was laying bricks in real time, building a version of events where she was the abandoned one. The wounded wife. The mother left to explain the silence. But I didn't respond. Not directly. Instead, I documented. Every voicemail. Every email. Every message she sent to friends, clients, even my extended family. My attorney, Wexler, had advised me to keep everything. Don't confront her. Don't correct anyone. Just collect. Her lies will prove your truth. At first, it felt wrong, letting people believe I was unstable, unwell. But over time, the strategy revealed itself. The more she tried to paint me as the villain, the more meticulous I became. Every fabrication she told added weight to her collapse. I wasn't fighting back with words. I was building a case. Still, I underestimated how fast the lies would travel. One day, I checked our son's school email, an automated update from the Savannah system. There was a message from his old art teacher, "Missing Vincent this week. Hope everything's okay. Allison said you're taking some time away. Let us know how we can support." It made my stomach twist. She was using his name to bolster her narrative now. And the worst part? She wasn't reaching out to see him. Not once had she asked to visit. Not once had she even tried to set up a call. She was more concerned about her image than her relationship with her own child. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't just about infidelity or betrayal. This was about preservation. Hers. She wasn't mourning the loss of our marriage. She was mourning the loss of control. Wexler kept reminding me, this is why we build the file. It's not just about the affair. It's the totality. The deception, the gaslighting, the manipulation. It tells a full story. So I doubled down. I started backing up every interaction. I even began recording audio memos when something struck me, memories, details, quotes. Like the way she called her dance class therapy, or how she said, "You've been distant lately," the exact week I had worked from home 3 days in a row to be near her. I began to see patterns in her words, the subtle shifts in phrasing she used to escape accountability. I also hired a forensic accountant. At first, it felt extreme. But Wexler said it would be smart to verify whether any assets had been shifted behind my back. And sure enough, we found more under her maiden name, a small private savings account with a separate mailing address and nearly $7,400 in it. The withdrawals matched up suspiciously with the weekend trips she used to take to visit Rachel. I had proof now not just of the affair, but of willful deceit. The hardest part, strangely, wasn't any of that. It was the quiet moments in between. The ones that crept up when I was brushing my son's hair or packing his lunch. The ones where I'd reach for my phone to text her something funny he said, only to remember we weren't those people anymore. That we probably hadn't been for a long time. Grief doesn't always arrive the way you expect it to. Sometimes it comes quietly, disguised as muscle memory.
Still, I stayed the course. I built a new routine in Augusta. Simple. Honest. I started jogging again. Cooking. Reading more than I had in years. I picked up new design projects, remote clients who didn't care what city I was in, only that I delivered. The work helped. Our son adjusted quicker than I expected. Children are more resilient than we give them credit for. He missed his room, sure, but he didn't ask about Allison much. And when he did, it wasn't with sadness. Just curiosity. Do you think Mommy's still at the old house? I told him the truth. Maybe. I don't really know. Because honestly, I didn't. For all I knew, she could have moved him in by now, the man from the gala. Or maybe it was someone else. A ghost I'd never seen coming. But I didn't ask. I didn't dig. That wasn't my path anymore. The real test came when one of her friends, someone who used to be a mutual, reached out to me. Her name was Kim. We weren't close, but she was sharp, observant. She'd always had a quiet affection for our family, I think. She sent a simple message. Hey Vincent, I know this might be weird, but can I ask you something privately? I've been hearing things, and I just wanted to check in directly. I stared at it for an hour before responding. Then I wrote, sure, ask whatever you need. She didn't waste time. Did you really leave because you were unstable? Or was there something else? I hesitated. Then I typed, all I'll say is this. I left because I finally saw things clearly, and because staying would have destroyed me. The rest will come out in time. She read it instantly, then replied, that's what I thought. It was the first crack in her story. And cracks, when given time, spread. The cracks started small, hesitations in conversations, awkward glances when her name came up. Kim must have said something, because I started hearing from people I hadn't spoken to in months. A friend of Allison's cousin reached out quietly. Was it really you who left? Or is that just what she's telling people? More questions followed. One by one, people stopped buying her story. The man from the gala, Marcus, was mentioned again. Someone had seen them together at a cafe in Bluffton weeks before I left. Too familiar. Too cozy. When asked directly, Allison deflected. Again. Even her mother called, asking gently, Vincent, is there something I should know? I didn't give details. I just said, the truth always finds a way out. Then our son, quiet, observant, wrote a letter to his grandmother. He told her in simple words, Mom had someone over while Dad was gone. I saw his shoes. That changed everything. Suddenly, the people defending her weren't so sure. Old friends stopped commenting on her posts. Mutuals stopped liking her photos. There were fewer invitations, fewer smiles at events. She began showing up less, explaining more. Her grip on the story was loosening, and I didn't have to lift a finger. Her words had always been her armor. But now, the silence around her was louder than anything she could say.